Welcome to our second webinar in our series for the Office of the CFO. Our topic every week is to talk about a problem statement or issues that are being faced by finance organizations and take a look at different solutions and different ways to address those problem statements. Our agenda for the webinar is to kick off, talk a little bit about ourselves, introduce the presenters, then go into our topic overview and clearly define our problem statement, move into a discussion this week that's really going to be centered around a walkthrough of a demo. And as we walk through the demo, we'll talk about the challenges and we'll talk about how, through the use of Anaplan, finance teams can make their life easier when going through the topic, and then we'll wrap things up. So quickly about us, here at Accelytics, we were established in 2015 as an Oracle consultancy, and since 2017, we've maintained an almost exclusive Anaplan partnership where we have 100% customer referenceability. We have three main Anaplan practices, which are supply chain, finance, and sales performance management, with about 40 tenured technology process experts located throughout the US and Canada, and one of the highest percentage of master Anaplanners on the staff. I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Mike Newberry. I am our finance practice lead here at Accelytics. In addition to 10 plus years in management consulting, I've spent over 15 years in various finance leadership roles, throughout finance acumen to the table, and have a love and passion for finance. Stephen?
Thanks, Mike. I'm Stephen Ganatovich. I've spent about the last 5 years working on the Anaplan platform. So implementations kind of far and wide, mostly within finance, but also in incentive compensation and sales performance management, and have implemented this kind of revenue planning use case that we've talked about for maybe 10 or 15 customers.
Great, thank you, Stephen. So quickly, our webinar series overview. The agenda we'll get into is one of the cornerstones of our webinar series is really around the evolving role of the CFO and what's that, the impacts to the finance teams, how we look at empowering finance teams to really deliver strategic value. Today's topic specifically is going to be around top-down, bottoms-up revenue planning. Overall top-down, bottoms-up planning, but specifically we're going to focus on revenue today. And then the real-world example walkthrough, and then inherent challenges that we'll address, having to deal with data, and the spreadsheet reliance that finance teams have. And then from the top-down and bottoms-up revenue planning perspective, literally gathering information or gathering data through email or verbal guidance. And then we'll get into the concept of black box technology. So as I mentioned, the cornerstone of our webinars every week start with this evolution of the role of the CFO and the situation faced by their teams. So quickly, how this role has evolved. Expectations have really changed from this back office closing the books mentality to the desire for finance teams to be that true business partner delivering insights and decision support. More than ever, finance teams are being tasked with being able to better leverage data throughout the enterprise to really drive value and empower the business with real-time insights. The often phrase we hear is, "I am blind running my business." Therefore, the CFO has really become the de facto lead for digital transformation. So as the Office of the CFO leading digital transformation, what we realize is that most finance teams are really not empowered or equipped to deliver strategic value, even though they're being asked to do so almost overnight. Data, enabling technology, role shift, analytical challenges are true inherent barriers for companies in realizing the potential that the finance function has to offer, and empowering that data-driven decision-making that improves performance across the enterprise. As I mentioned, the digital transformation challenges we see are many, but the buckets that we're focused on and want to outline in our webinar series are really around data, enabling technology, sort of analytical barriers, in addition to the role shift. Talking about data, that's really just the struggle to capture data efficiently and effectively, and relying on disconnected, manual, time-consuming processes. Enabling technology really is about previous designs, as the pace of organizational change has increased, are really not nimble enough to handle the speed of change. And what we see them in many of our clients is they're becoming obsolete, and it forces finance into Excel. This analytical piece that their finance teams are being asked to shift their time to really do scenario modeling and analytical work. The challenge with that is that data and enabling technology, if those are not running in sync and working well, it's very difficult to find the time to do the analytical work. And then lastly, this role shift that's being asked overnight, as we've mentioned, from strategic advisor to business partner, is really becoming a cultural change that often isn't recognized. So there's a hard time for certain finance people or finance organizations just to make that shift in the quick time frame that they're being asked to do so. Our topic overview today was top-down and bottom-up planning are the two most popular types in corporate finance. If you think about it, top-down starts with senior management creating high-level guidance for the entire organization and allocating that plan to the business. And there's many ways that that's done, but the gist of it is through macroeconomic information or previous historical data, management essentially pushes down targets to be used. The business then creates their own plan that is confined to the amounts allocated by the top management. And then, although the top-down planning process, the advantage of it is it takes less time, the struggle is the business is often trying to fit within these constraints, even though the associated factors of their particular business may have not been taken into account with the top-down management. So this disconnect we see. Bottoms-up planning is where the business has more power in contributing to the organizational plan. So you think about it, the department or business level plan estimates are done at the lowest levels and then are summed up to get to the overall organizational plan. Bottom-up allows the business to own the process since they are familiar with the details at the lower levels of the business. And what we see often is that this is also a motivation to work hard since they feel that their input to the organization is valued by management. They're not thrown a number and then have to deal with that number. They're able to build up something and provide a plan based on lowest level detail of assumptions and present that up to management. But on the downside, without that guidance, they may produce plans that are off target and not in line with company objectives. So there's good and bad and lots of advantages and disadvantages to each.
So why it's important to do both of these, or at least consider a tops down and bottoms up revenue planning methodologies. The first is a merge on accuracy. The whole purpose of this exercise is to arrive at a target of greater precision, right, and greater accuracy in the full perspective of the revenue plan. So in this kind of methodology, all participants really share the same goal of creating the more accurate forecast. So there may be components of a revenue plan from the bottoms up build that the executive or C-suite level is just not aware of. And similarly, there may be product decisions or greater company initiatives at the higher level that those responsible for product or branch level sales are not responsible for. The second piece to this that Mike hit on is really the engagement. With the top-down only approach, it becomes more of a directive of these are the kinds of revenue targets that we need to hit, rather than enabling the rest of the finance teams, maybe regionally or product-based, to state their case and build their own plan to commit to. The final piece here is really a trust in data. And this one's really obvious, right? And experienced really by all involved in creating a revenue plan. Whenever there's multiple level revenue plans like this in a product like Excel, this becomes just a huge mess of Excel workbooks that everyone's handling separately. So whenever there is a merge onto the plan, really becomes impossible to know what's the latest and greatest, or how to include all levels of the organization in that revenue plan. So as changes are made, the changes to those workbooks really also proliferate.
Thanks, Stephen. And as mentioned, what we're going to do next is go through a fairly straightforward demo to walk through how Anaplan handles top-down, bottoms-up planning. As Stephen walks through that, we'll talk about the advantages of using Anaplan for that situation, as well as challenges that are faced, in today's world outside of Anaplan.
So here we are at our fp&a demo for Accelytics. And we use this demo both for demonstration purposes, and then there's also a component to this that we feel like can be plug and play into lots of different organizations. So here we are, we're on our navigation menu. You'll see on the right, there's some reporting capabilities. There's also some cost spend planning. And we'll get into those topics in other webinars as well. Today, we're really going to focus on that left panel, and that's revenue planning. So here we've got 4 levels of the hierarchy that are represented as revenue planners. So L4, we think of as this is branch level or product level. The advantage to a product like a platform like Anaplan is that these hierarchies are so flexible. So here we have this structured in terms of a branch level, rolling up to a country, rolling up to a region, rolling up to a global entity. It's also possible that this hierarchy should be structured in terms of product A, B, and C, rolling up to a product family, rolling up to a product line, rolling up to the global entity. The ability to make those changes in Anaplan this is really a 10-minute exercise, not an entire organization change. If that exists in the raw data, then we're able to create these hierarchies very quickly. So the structure to this model is certainly customer or branch rolling up to region, but there is enormous flexibility in this product for that to look like something else. So here on this L4 level sales planning dashboard, we can see here 2 prior year sales. We have a monthly organization of this year, prior year sales, and then we have this line of statistical forecast. These are all just function as suggestions for really what becomes the plan number at the L4 level. And there's really even more possibilities for that, for what this L4 level plan actually is. So I'm going to open up this statistical calculations dashboard. And here we have by branch the ability to make selections based on the numbers down here. So we have here 6 different scenarios or ways to calculate the L4 level revenue plan. And really this can be used at all levels, right? So this same kind of statistical modeling here, this could be applied from L4, L3, L2, all the way up to the executive level. And here we have an actual, we have a mean scenario, we have standard deviation, linear regression, and previous year percentage growth. So by each one of these branches, so as the user of this, I could be the owner of branch A, and I could come in and I could select the linear regression and use that as a recommendation that then feeds back into my L4 level plan. Or as perhaps I run the country of Norway, and then I'm deciding within the branch beneath that, this is what all of the revenue planning statistical calculation should be. So let's say at branch A, let's go back to the L4 level plan. I've suggested this linear regression model, and let's go back there. So now this is that number in January 21 here. This is the statistical forecast that was selected on the previous dashboard. So if I want to use this, I can just copy that line, paste that directly into my sales override, and that becomes my new current year sales plan. Could also keep original plan by just selecting this, and that resorts back to my original plan. And in this way, I really have a numbers-based approach to, at the lowest level, how I create my revenue plan. So I've chosen this statistical forecast. This is based on the method on the previous dashboard. This is what I'm going to use to create my L4 level plan that will then trickle up through the organization. So now as we move to L3, this is a different type of user, right? So if we look to our hierarchies up here, now we lose that L4 branch level, and now we're at the Norway level. So this has already consolidated all of those L4 level plans and brought them up to this level. So now I can make decisions based on that L4 level, and I can choose to override values here.
Yeah, and as Stephen is demonstrating that, the reality that we see with many finance organizations is the levels that we're illustrating here from L4 to L3 up to L2 through the hierarchy that's been built in here. If you think about that in the real world, oftentimes each level consists of many different groups of spreadsheets then that are passed back and forth via a manual workflow, for approvals or changes or feedback along the way. And this is all done seamlessly. There's an understanding of what a top-down target would be, and then it allows time to introduce more advanced capabilities that Stephen illustrated around statistical forecasting that you could not do passing spreadsheets around.
And really, we see this across all types of organizations. And this is certainly true in revenue planning, but we see the same kind of exercise anytime where there's frequent updates to a plan. And just this ability to have multiple levels of planning consolidated into one platform where changes are tracked. So I could drill down in here and I can see the history within this cell. So I could know, as I make this change to this cell, I can see, okay, Mike also went in here. Mike made a change on this date. Now Mike and I can have a conversation about this date. We know where the cell is, and we know that we're both operating on the latest and greatest data that we've created. So same kind of thing as we move up the hierarchy here. So L4 is complete. We chose the linear regression model for Norway. We've moved that up to L3 now. We've made light changes. Sales plan looked good from the L4 level. That's what we're choosing to go with. And now we can continue to move up the hierarchy as we get to a region. So now here, same kind of structure. So instead of, if I look back to my hierarchy, now I'm the owner of Europe. So the L4 level is complete. That's been sent up to the country level. That's all been consolidated at the Europe level. And this is a place that really requires no work, right? So now all of that plan has already been created. Now, if I want to make light changes again, hope I'm right with zeros there. Okay, revenue plan looks good. Sales number override brought slightly up. And now the planning at that L2 level is mostly complete. So if I need to send this and create the overall plan, that then rolls up to this executive sales review dashboard. So here now I can see at this level, I've really married up all levels of the plan. So I can see 2 prior years of sales, a prior year of sales, the bottoms up level plan, as that rolled up into L3 and L2, the manager adjusted plan. And now I can start to apply either dollar overrides or percentage overrides to those numbers. And this really becomes a conversation. So the planning really doesn't stop here then, right? So now there is this, in Q1, we've decided we want 5% growth based on that manager adjusted plan. And now that becomes a conversation that trickles back down to the managers of how that 5% gets distributed. Does that enable things like promotions that need to be enacted in different regional levels, right? It's identification of where maybe certain branches, countries, regions are lagging, and how that 5% can be made up. What are the strategies that need to be enacted by the organization to achieve that?
And the beauty of a tool like Anaplan to be able to do this is, as Stephen mentioned, it creates those conversations. It creates that level of engagement. You're not passing spreadsheets. You're not sending emails back and forth. It creates information right in front of you, passed up to different levels with different levels of approval. The workflow is there, and it creates that mechanism for your organization to have the right conversations to get to a plan that everybody's bought into and engaged with.
The last piece that I want to mention here is that throughout all of those levels of the hierarchy, from L4 up through L3 and all the way to the executive sales review that we're on here, this also includes the actuals in it. So this is linked directly to the source systems. And just through a click of the button, these actuals are updated from source systems. And all throughout the hierarchy, everyone's operating with the latest and greatest sales plan as well as actuals feeding that. We also have functionality in here that will write into the forecast the actuals numbers, so for previous years. We hope that this was a useful demonstration of multiple level planning in the Anaplan platform. Look forward to continuing the conversation if there's greater functionality that you'd like to see in Anaplan for this purpose.
Yeah, thanks again for listening to our second webinar in our CFO series. And each week, as Stephen mentioned, we will, continue to present topics that we hear from our clients that are useful and real world challenges that they're facing. And we're here to talk about that. So thanks again, and we'll see you for the next webinar.